This is Andrew Stotts of A Stotts Investment Research to talk to you about world-class benchmarking and how to use it to become financially world-class. This is part one, where I show that world-class benchmarking is simple, focused, and team building. This will be followed in another section of how I explain how it helps you balance the competing pressures of profitability and growth. Its focus on profitable growth increases the value of your business. It is challenging, very challenging, to be world-class. You must beat global peers. And finally, the world-class benchmarking triangle is easy to understand and apply. So let's start with section 1, part 1. WCB is simple, focused, and team building. Well, first, business and finance in particular is complicated, scattered, and individual. We want to move from complicated to simple, from scattered to focused, and individual to team. So there's 3 barriers that I see to becoming financially world-class. First, complication. Finance is hard to understand for most employees. I know that because I've taught finance for more than 2 decades. Most management teams are scattered. The management team focuses on many different financial measures. And if you have a CFO, they will focus on a ton of different measures. And the other barrier is individual behavior. Management hurts teamwork by setting up internal competition between employees. World-class benchmarking helps you overcome these 3 barriers to becoming financially world-class. We go from complicated to simple. It narrows the finances of your business down to one measure that all employees can understand. That's right, all employees. Whether it's the head of finance, the CEO, the head of sales, the head of human resources, or the frontline employees. All employees can understand world-class benchmarking. It takes you from scattered to focus. Its simplicity and repetition helps managers to make business decisions in a financial framework. Think of it like a scorecard. In a football match, how often do they change the score? They never. It's the same way of scoring. And therefore, the players can understand it as well as the audience. And it takes us from individual to team. It builds true teamwork by aligning all teams or all employees behind one goal, which is to become financially world-class. Now that's hard. It can only be done through great management decisions about your product and service. That's the key to getting there. But world-class benchmarking is the scorecard we use. What makes a business such a complex and constantly evolving thing? First, there's never enough resources. We all know that. Business grows more complex over time. Never does it automatically become more simple. We, as managers and directors of a business, have to get it more simple. Also, success is dependent on the people. And all people are driven by different things. Emotion, logic, things that are going on in their life, things that have happened in their past. This is complex stuff. And of course, for every single business, there is no plan or script or music score. The management team must make that up as we go along. And the only way you really know if that plan was right is to watch what happens over time. That's complex. Now let's think about the degrees of cooperation in sports. First, we have individual sports. Sports like boxing, marathon running, wrestling, golf. These are done by one person improving themselves with no need to cooperate with a team. Now, let's look at team competitions. This is where athletes compete individually, but for a combined team score. So it could be a relay race, swimming, gymnastics competition. These are a higher level of cooperation. But of course, team sports are the highest level of cooperation, where two or more athletes work together towards a shared objective. So think of football or basketball as an example. Well, what about the amount of cooperation that is required in an orchestra? Well, what is an orchestra? It's a group of musicians of four major sections of instruments. That's strings, brass, woodwind, and percussion. And there we have a beautiful picture of an orchestra. Can you imagine the sound that's coming out of that orchestra? Wow, fantastic, amazing. And what's that guy in the front, the conductor? This is like the management team of a company, trying to get one part to play, then another part, then everybody together, then down, then up. It's a complex thing. The good news about an orchestra is that they have a score, or they have music that they're playing off of. They don't have to create it as they go along, but they have to make it sound good. So an orchestra sounds best when musicians are working together. It sounds terrible if musicians are not in sync with each other and or are playing louder than their colleagues. So therefore, sections of an orchestra would be sub-optimized to optimize the whole. There are people in this orchestra that could play the whole night their own instrument to a fantastic degree, and they would sound amazing. But if everybody in the orchestra stood up and tried to do their best, then you would have a terrible sound. So a business is a bit like an orchestra, where if we incentivize people in the business to do their best and reward them for their individual KPIs, you run the risk of people all standing up at the same time to get that bonus and to get that score on their KPI. Well, that's not the way a complex system works. So let's talk about the cooperation that is required in a business. A business is an organization where managers receive money from investors. It could be money from themselves or outside investors, and they invest that in assets and human resources to create a product or service that generates a profit. There it is. Now, if you're a non-profit organization or business, your objective is not necessarily to generate a profit where your costs match your revenue. But generally for a business, your objective is to make a profit. Now, this is generally done through 6 functions. That's legal, manufacturing, marketing, accounting, finance, human resource, and we can say within marketing is sales. So what is the objective of management after all? That's a good question. Hold on. Dr. W. Edwards Deming said in this great book, and in my time listening and learning from him, the objective of management is to create constancy of purpose toward improvement of product and service with the aim to become competitive and to stay in business and to provide jobs. And when he said it in person, he said, and more jobs and more jobs. Dr. Deming advised companies like Toyota, Nissan, and many others, particularly in Japan. Now, the last thing I want to say is that it's hard work to become financially world-class. It is not easy. Business is complex. Therefore, we must work hard to make it simple. Business is scattered. Therefore, we must work hard to make it focused. Business needs teamwork. Therefore, we must work hard to get all people working together. So what have you learned in this part 1? Number 1, the 3 barriers to becoming financially world-class are complicated, scattered, individual. Business is a very complex team-based system. Optimum output for the customer comes when some parts of the business and some people within the business are at times sub-optimized. Like an orchestra, that is true teamwork. World-class benchmarking makes financial performance simple, focused, and team. So that wraps up part 1, and I'll join you in part 2 soon. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the message area. Have a great day.